Welcome to our Devos. This is the final part of our series, Reclaim Dominion. And we talked about how dominion was God's gift to the inhabitants of the earth. He gave Adam and Eve dominion over the world. And that word means like lordship. It means overseeing. It means literally in the Hebrew, like to trample under, to subdue. And when we get away from the idea that God has created us with this in mind, other things can have dominion over us. So today, I want to leave you with a positive thing. And if you would say, I don't believe there's a silver bullet to overcoming addiction of any kind. I don't believe that. I think there's a couple things that will really help you to remember when it comes to overcoming any addiction. But today I want to land in the same place that the sermon landed, and that is devote yourself to what God has called you to do. C.S. Lewis, and in the sermon we talked about this, C.S. Lewis has that famous quote that your desires are lacking. It's not that your passions are too strong, it's that they're not strong enough. And the problem is we don't really have a passion for the thing that God has created us to do, so we find ourselves taking passion cues from things that are destroying us. We don't have a passion to make the impact on this world that God wants for us, but instead what we do is we have a passion for the things of lesser worth. I think that's true with all addiction. God's created us uniquely to have dominion. God's created us to, I'm working on this secret project. It's really big. I'm going to tell the church about it in the coming new year. It's probably the most important thing that I've ever worked on. And a lot of these issues are tied up in that. And God just really has been speaking to me about this subject. But part of that subject is when you start to identify with who God created you to be and not who the world has called you, not who your family has called you, but who God created you to be. And then what happens is you start to, and I can't think of a better way to say it, but you start to fall in love with what God has created you to do. Once you realize what he created you to do, and it's not a purpose, like it's not like finding a treasure map, but once you realize that you're operating in your sphere of giftedness, once you realize that God is using you as you are to kind of oversee something in your life, to have dominion over something, once you realize that you are firing on all the cylinders and that you're starting to realize that the thing that you desired is so much less worthwhile than what God has given you and what God has put before you, it makes all those other desires really weak. I'm telling you, this is working out in my own life in a couple areas, and it really is. And more specifically, it's something that all of us can do, is to fall in love with the idea of what God has called us to do. Now, in Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, and here's why you know it's just not one specific thing. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. This doesn't have to be a once and done thing. You can really work heartily for the Lord minute by minute. When I'm dealing with somebody, and I just did a wedding a couple days ago, and it was a really special wedding. And there's a lot of weird things that I've been dealing with on the side, my side work, and then weird things at the church that we've been working on, and a lot of different things, a lot of irons in the fire. And I was driving to go do this wedding for somebody that's kind of special to us, and I was having trouble getting my focus, and my brain was just not there. Okay, and I was distracted. When I pulled up, when I saw the bride, when I saw the groom standing there, and I saw how excited they were, it all just went into the back seat, all of it. And in that moment, the only thing that mattered in that moment was what I was doing in that moment. And just for that little bit of time, that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, all the other stuff disappeared. When was the last time you were doing something and time disappeared? You looked up and saw the clock and said, I can't believe I've been doing this. Was it something like a walk? Was it something where you were maybe working on something, building something? I've talked to men who they do woodworking or they do engine repair, and they said they can go in their shop and they could spend a whole day and not even realize that they were there and didn't eat lunch, didn't eat dinner. Like, when was the last time got away from you because you were lost in the moment? One of the ways that we get over the problem with addiction is by realizing that there are things that God has placed in our lives for us to do. And he wants us to get lost in them. He wants us to get truly, truly engaged in having dominion and having the ability to do the thing that he's called you to. It's a remarkable thing when we can embrace his calling, when we can let go the thing that's trying to have dominion over us.